Alright, today we're going to be comparing Overdriver with Minigun. Now, the only Overdriver to exist is the 16 as of right now. However, we can simulate what double 12s will look like if we slap a single 16 on a Stalker with the 50% bonus damage. So let's get right into it. Alright, before we get into the results, I do want to make a note real quick. You may or may not have noticed that my Stalker had a very short cooldown time, and this is because of editing. Now, the Overdriver works a bit like recharge weapons, which means after overheating, it does not fully reload, meaning that it has part of its ammo left by the time it's done reloading, but not all of it. So if you're just holding down the trigger, then, you know, I can't just wait for my ability to come back and then start from scratch. So what I ended up doing was this right here, where once my ability was about to be ready, I would overheat it on just like the wall or anywhere, and then prepare myself, line myself back up so I could activate it once it goes back in, and then I just, you know, synchronized the clips. So I just want to be transparent there, but yeah, let's get into the results. So I made these charts, and it took way longer than it needed to, but we're going to focus on this one right now. This is without a pilot. This is where the performance tapers off. Now, Minigun, you see the two kind of reddish ones, and then Overdriver is like the yellowish ones. Minigun either does really, really good or really, really bad, depending on the range. Now, this should be expected, because Minigun obviously has a lot of spread, and if you don't have the recoil implant, at 100 meters range, it's probably going to take a very long time to kill most things. And that makes sense. Overdriver performance, very, very similar, nearly identical. You can see that in regard to like weaker targets, 100,000 HP, they all kind of kill around the same speed. And then of course, Minigun, if you're closer up, it's going to do basically everything that Overdriver can, but better, because it just has stupid amounts of DPS. So you can see Overdriver is kind of in the middle between Minigun at 50 meters and Minigun at 100 meters. So I would expect Minigun at a roughly 75 meters to perform about as well as Overdrivers do at basically any range, because they seem very reliable. They don't really have any range fall off. But the miniguns do, and that's what makes them a really good brawler weapon, which is mostly what you end up doing if you have like a high DPS sustained fire weapon. There's kind of no point to keeping yourself at range. This is why chain gun sounds good in theory, but ends up just kind of being worthless, because if you're at range, you may as well be using a sniper that just does a lot more damage in a shorter time frame before people are able to hide. When you're further away, there's a lot more things that can get between you. There's a lot fewer angles that you can take to hit someone. So typically, high damage, specifically sustained fire weapons, are better used relatively up close, like maybe, 0 to 50. And in that regard, Minigun being the clear winner here in terms of no pilots. So if you're raw dogging it and you don't have any implants, then Minigun's definitely the better one to go for. Moving over to the one with a pilot, this is a very interwoven spaghetti type thing. But you see, both of them are actually like very similar, really. So to a large degree, it's really just projectile speed that's the difference here, and you could very accurately compare results just by the bright red, the bright yellow, which doing right now. You see kind of the same thing that you see with most weapons. In fact, this was basically the exact same chart that we had for the old chain gun back in the day. I don't know if you remember this. I don't remember exactly what I said about it, but I'll play the clip right here. Generally speaking, the chain gun line is above the minigun line, and it seems that on average, any enemy with more than 200,000 hit points is more than likely going to die faster to a minigun than it will to a chain gun, because again, chain gun line is above the minigun line. That means more time. That means not great. So yeah, what I ended up trying to get the dips to do, which they ended up doing after a while, by the way, was pushing this intersection point over to the right so that the yellow isn't being like completely overpowered by the red line. The Overdriver is the yellow one, and it crosses off pretty early. What this is it's the firing mechanic. It's literally just the lack of a delayed firing mechanic on Overdriver causes it to kill weak things faster, because it doesn't have to wait a full second to spin up its barrels to then start doing lots of damage. Because when it comes to weak things, a full second is quite a lot of time. But when it gets to stronger things, not so much. These lines are much, much closer than the chain gun one was, I'm pretty sure. And the weapon mechanics are also very different. I'll get into my legitimate thoughts on this after, but right now I'm just kind of, observing the graph. But it's very clear to see that anything at roughly 175,000 HP or more, anything with more than that, which is basically any full HP mech at late game, right? A surge, it has like over 200,000 hit points with a max playment. So yeah, miniguns will shred that quicker than Overcharger will. So it begs the question, what is Overcharger good for? And so now we're going to just get into my thoughts, my personal thoughts on the matter. I think this is very different from the chain gun situation. The chain gun situation was... Chain gun was basically exactly like minigun, but worse. It had half the firing time and half the reload time, so it was essentially just a minigun, but that just didn't do what minigun does. Overcharge is completely different. It has a really quick reload speed, and so it has a lot of valuable uptime. This makes it potentially better as a brawler than minigun, because minigun, you have to always be aware, you have to always keep in mind that you as a minigun user have to reload at some point, and once you start to reload, you're out of the game for like 10 plus seconds, and you have to do that in safety, which means that you can't be particularly aggressive. This also means that if someone has a guardian or you know, you end up getting rushed by something, you know, and burn through all your ammo, in a pinch, you don't have ammo when you need it, and this is where Overcharger comes in. I think that it does very, very similar damage to Minigun. I think it has very similar capabilities. Less DPS, less killing power, but what it does have is versatility. It also loses less damage at range. And this is all, you know, available to you for no special implants. Like, Minigun's very reliant on the recoil implant, and the reload implant, and the damage implant, of course, because you need, you know, to maximize your damage. So Minigun kind of really requires all three implants. Overdriver does not. The only one that you really need is the damage. Now, unfortunately, there's only one variant, and it's the legendary. But, you know, that is the best one. If you can get it, then you'd be good. And so I don't see Overdriver as a replacement to Minigun, or as better or worse, or anything specific like that. I see it as a slightly different method of doing similar things that Minigun does. And that might make it better on some mechs. Now, I've always found Minigun to be pretty fun to use and relatively effective on mechs like Vortex or Bastion. However, both of those are fairly aggressive mechs. And like I said before, you don't want to be too aggressive with Minigun. It just doesn't work out that well for you. I think quite possibly you could get better use out of those mechs with Overdriver rather than Minigun. Not that not that it was the best build decision either way, but just as an example, Overdriver is probably better used as an aggressive weapon over Minigun, whereas Minigun does just generally have the better DPS. So yeah, it's just my thoughts. I find the weapon pretty good. I think it's pretty balanced, but of course it is pretty hard to say this early on. A very limited experience with it. No experience on the live server with it. So there is that to be said. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Which weapon would you choose if you could have either one, Minigun or Overdriver? Which one do you think that you'd enjoy more? Or which one do you think would fit your mechs or your playstyle better? But otherwise, that will be it for me. Appreciate y'all. Take care.